Nice of you to remember what we did.
Okay, this is round 2 since the iPad started going crazy. So this is part 2 of our video. So we were just talking about the assessment, about the actual assignment and the grading of it. So what percentage would you say of students mastered your skill that you were teaching?
I would say that the specific skill, I would say probably about 90% of them
Okay.
got the skill right. That doesn't reflect the number of kids that would have gotten like a perfect score on the assignments. But as far as basically doing the math, which was
Right.
truly what the skill was about, I'd say about 90% of them got
That's
it
pretty
right.
good. What are your next steps using this data, using this assignment? So
Well,
are you?
with those assignments, what would happen is if I had, if I didn't have 90% mastery, if it was somewhat less than that, we would have continued with some more exercises that test those particular skills. And there's still a few of them that are going to filter in. We just talked about it yesterday, and we have more coming up today, but we won't spend a lot of time on instruction. That'll be more in terms of reinforcement than me spending another 10 minutes talking about PMTs when it's obvious that the kids seem to get it.
Okay. All right. So, what other ways do you think you could assess student mastery during instruction? You used a lot of verbal questioning, and I'm just going to read a couple of them to you. So, after you shared the formula, the original one, well, that was part of you did that on purpose. Okay, everyone find this okay. Raise your hand if you didn't get it so I can help you. So, everyone find this okay. Did everybody get this? Those were kind of the regular questions that I saw you using to check for understanding. Is this okay? You have it. How do you feel about this kind of thing? So it was general, and you would usually get 1 or 2 kids responding. And I know there was one girl who was kind of lost. She was the one over in the corner, and did everybody get this? And she said no. Yeah. And you said, well, how can I help you? I don't know.
We have that conversation every day.
Yeah, I figured. But so that you were, attempting to assess if they were getting it or if they were with you or not. But I don't know if it was effective enough to give you a really good reading of the room about who was getting, and I know you could see their computers, but are there any other ways that you thought about assessing mastery during your instruction?
In the past, I've had kids take my computer, and instead of me doing the assessment, or instead of me doing the exercise, with them watching, I'll have them do it with me watching. There are times when I'll, ask kids, okay, what goes here, and that's a little bit better for assessing if they really know what's going on or if they're just parroting what I'm doing. It just kind of depends on the assignment. On that one's the instruction is kind of out there a little bit. It's definitely helpful for them to see it once, because it's not obvious what goes in which box and things like that. So it definitely helps them to see it once. Maybe another example where I show them once and then we fill it in together. Kind of thing. It's, me do it, us do it, they do it.
Yeah.
I think maybe would help with that.
Okay. Let's see. Now I know that you went around and you were helping the students, and that was a good way, and it seemed like you really gave them, any student that had a question, you gave them your full attention, you gave them an extended amount of time, which I thought was really nice. You didn't brush off any students, even the girl that was, sleeping during the lesson, you still worked with her and caught her up. And I think that they weren't afraid to ask you for help.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah. So I couldn't hear all of the conversations, but what skills or steps did you find them struggling the most with? Was there a common question that they were asking, or
there's not really a common question. There's kind of a common theme, which is basically which data am I supposed to use? And because the prompts from Excel are pretty statistical and pretty mathy, And I just don't think that the kids had the vocabulary to get their prompts from Excel. And I tried to share that vocabulary with them. Unfortunately, because the skills kind of come so fast and furious, there's not a lot of time for me to sit and do all of the vocabulary where we could, do a formative vocabulary assessment, we could instruct on vocabulary, and then we could do a summative assessment on vocabulary, because there's just not time. And in the grand scheme of things, as important as those skills are, the vocabulary isn't necessarily worth the time that it takes to truly instruct in the vocabulary. So I try to incorporate that into when we're demonstrating the skill, but I'm not sure I am sure that not everybody got it, because those are the questions that I get most of the time. Some things that I thought of doing is even putting posters in the room. PV means present value. That means how much are you investing. But again, we're going to work with payments for about 2 or 3 days, and then we're going to move on. So how relevant is that? How much attention is that going to get from the kids? And it's something that's specific to that particular skill. Is that really what's important enough to spend that much time?
Yeah, I understand those questions for sure. Is there anything else from the lesson before we move into kind of my observations? Is there anything else that you want to share or discuss from?
Nope, not really.
Okay. You're doing a lot of talking.
Yeah.
You're doing so great. Okay. So first we'll talk about what I saw as the strengths, and I've kind of identified a couple of these. When I was observing, I was focused on a couple of standards on the Iowa Teaching Standards and Criteria, so you can have a copy of this. I was really looking at standard number 6, competence in classroom. Let's see. Wait a minute. Where is it? Standards, we'll start with number 4. So standard number 4, the use of strategies to deliver instruction that meets multiple learning needs of students. Standard 5, the variety of methods to monitor student learning. And then standard 6, the demonstrating competence in classroom management. So what I found with your strengths, I thought that the classroom management piece is definitely one of your strengths. And I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, I know that we do regular peer observations, and I feel like I've got a fairly decent handle on that compared to some of the things.
I mean, you're not combative, and with this, with the group of students that you have, the way that you, addressed some of the sleeping. I mean, there were a couple of the kids that you, went and visited, and just I wouldn't have even noticed if I wasn't watching for it. And the conversation again, and the basic environment in the room. I thought it was really creates a safe and purposeful learning environment. You really focused on building that background information for them. You really wanted to connect it. But they responded to that. And I think that that's definitely one of your strengths that I observed. The student interaction during the discussion, the strategies to deliver instruction that meets the multiple learning needs of the students. They like to talk, and you've tapped into that. And, again, you said, you wish that it was more of the students that had been involved in it. But those key students, some of those, they were all listening, and they were engaging, even if they weren't actually physically speaking. And the process for addressing the individual needs during the work time, the flexibility and responsiveness in adjusting your instruction to meet the needs. That one, I thought, your process, you said, I'm making my way through the room, I'll be with you shortly. Really gave them, they let them know that you were coming and you were going to help them, but you gave every student an amount of time. You didn't rush it. They didn't feel like you just kind of let them hang and let them suffer. So I think that, you clearly care about the students, and that comes through, and those students will recognize that, and they will work for you for that. And I think that that's a clear dynamic in your classroom. So I loved seeing that. Let's see. In our discussion, you hit a lot of the areas that I was going to mention as things that you could, add in to just kind of move the classroom, move the instruction along a little bit, and, make sure that you're tapping into what those students are doing. So the classroom procedures and the lesson structure, I do notice with block scheduling, I notice there's, and it's not just in this room, but there's the holes of time that aren't used,
Yeah.
and I was always a bell to bell, so that could just be me. We had 42 minutes, and I would do a time on my agenda. So this will take 3 minutes, this will take 6 minutes, this will take, and I laid it out. So that might just be one of my personality traits. But I did notice, right at the beginning with the bell ringer, sometimes that's an easy way just to get them in and get them started, and start thinking about what the lesson is. And it can be, a question or a review from the previous, where you mentioned that you are going to do reinforcement after this. So that would be a great time to do some of that reinforcement. Here's a Excel problem to solve. And they just get to sit and do that quickly, kind of thing. So then they're using their time. You get to take attendance without them, because some of them I know they were checking grades, which is great, but some of them were doing those stupid games that they do. Others were checking their phones, and so having something that they know when they come in they need to do that can be beneficial for your instruction, sets the tone of the classroom, and uses that time instead of having some of that dead time. So that's an easy one to just pull in right at the beginning. But they seem to understand the rest of your procedures. They knew exactly where to go get the worksheet from, and that was good to get them up and moving too.
Yeah.
Get their brains working a little bit. So that was, I thought that was good. And then the lesson structure, if you said most of your days it's the 1/3 to the 2/3, I did think that, as you went through, there could have been maybe a break. Maybe you did the future value first.
Yeah.
Gave them some work time and then came back and did the PMT.
Yeah, and I've thought of that too. And in that particular skill it would work. Unfortunately, most of what we do, it all kind of builds on itself. I've looked at ways to try to break it down into smaller chunks, but it's I've just, most of what we do, it's just got you instruct and then
they do.
and then they do. The other thing that I run into with that is there's just such a wide range of the time that it takes. When I break it up like that, I end up with the kids that get through the stuff quickly sitting around a lot, while the other kids, again, because there's no homework, because we can't count on them having the equipment to even complete homework if I gave it, I feel that it's my duty to give them the time in class. So I get stuck between, well, this kid finished in 5 minutes, this kid needs 15 minutes, and what do we do with those extra 10? When I break it up chunk by chunk, it tends to expand the amount of time that those extra kids. Well, what I've tried to do is I've tried to introduce some other things for those other kids to do, but unfortunately, there's only so much of that stuff that the kids will do until they find, well, all I'm doing is doing extra work. I'll just start working slower so I don't have to do the extra stuff or the enrichment stuff. There's a few kids that'll just take as much as you give them, but there's a lot of them that are good at stuff, but don't want to do any more than they absolutely have to. And so,
have you ever used the students to help each other?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that goes on.
I noticed that, side by side.
And I encourage that from the very first day. Part of my first day speech is that, I'm only one person and there's 23 people in the room. If you need help and the person next to you knows how to do it, ask them rather than wait for me to get to you. I'll get there eventually, but if you can get help right away from someone, that they know that they're responsible for their own work, but they also know that the only time I'm going to insist that they're doing it without help is when we take the final test. I encourage them to do it themselves because so they always know. Over and over again, they're told that on the final, it's what you can do. The rest of the stuff is someone else can help you.
It's practice.
Then have them help you.
Okay.
So I really encourage the students to help each other, and that does give the students that do work a little bit more quickly, gives them something to do. But again, there's a handful of them that will embrace that, and then there's the rest of them that don't really they want to do their own stuff. And so again, I've seen them slow down so that they don't have to do the extra stuff.
Which you'll find that's normal. In regards to the enrichment activities, something, I don't know if, usually it's finding something that the kids care about. I mean, just doing other word problems is probably not gonna, get them all excited to go on and move forward. But if there was some, I don't know if there, and I could brainstorm with you, I'd be happy to, but some maybe ongoing project where they're using pieces or,
That's with the meeting that I just had with my evaluator, my real career plan, that's what it is becoming more project-based rather than assignment-based. And so that's a direction that I'm trying to head.
Okay.
I don't know that I'm making the progress that I'd like to make, but that's definitely on my radar. You're definitely not wrong, and if you're willing to help with that, I'm willing to take
I know. I'm thinking about, we have the week at Perkins Week, where we have all those days, and we have in-services all the time. So that's definitely something that we could focus on, doing a small group if someone's interested in learning about this or just having time. Really, that's the biggest issue is having that time to get that done. Let's see, the other area, the student engagement during direct instruction, I think we both kind of hit on that. It kind of wavered a little bit. And while the conversation piece does, pull in some of those kids, I completely agree with you that it really was focused on a couple. There's a couple that really tune into that. And the rest are listening, but they were very passive during the instructional piece. So one of the areas that I thought maybe there could be a consideration is different ways to get them more involved. In terms of, when I mentioned the reflection, just even at this point where you say, okay, why are we doing, how would the car work or how would the car payments work? And just giving them a chance to just turn and talk to their neighbor. Initially when you do that kind of thing, and I'm sure you've tried it before, but sometimes their conversations are not relevant. They don't make any sense. But the more you practice and the more you actually teach them the skill of, turn and talk, and you give them a specific prompt, talk about what, a car that costs $25,000 at 5% interest, what do you think it will cost in, if it's paid off in 10 years? And they can so they can brainstorm or, have a little bit more ownership over the conversation versus just being able to sit there and kind of listen, but even just allowing them to each have a voice. And the same with the assessing student understanding. With the questions, when they're kind of just thrown out and then whoever wants to answer, they're, I noticed, let's see, it's the front left. So from where I was sitting, so your front part of the room over on that side. So if you were looking at them, they're over here. They seem like they're all really good kids that are pretty much focused. And I don't think I heard any of them speak. I don't think I saw any of them really engage. So personally, I have no idea how they were doing. So one of the other pieces is just different ways to formatively assess, and it could be visual ways. So something as easy as, instead of do you guys get it, how do you feel about getting the time payment 0 to 5? 5, I totally get it, I could teach it. 0, I have no idea what you're talking about. And what that kind of does is that provides them an opportunity to give you feedback without having to talk, in a place where they're not pointed out, they don't have to raise their hand and engage. They can just quickly show you, and you can get a scan of the room very easily that says, okay, 90% of these kids are at 2s. I need to explain this one more time. Thing.
And I used to do that, and again, it wasn't super. It didn't feel super successful. It would be, I was always, a 3-point scale. 2 hands, 1 hand, no hands. So if you got it, 2 hands in the air, like you just don't care. And if you think you kind of got it, 1 hand, and then if you don't have it, 1. And I mean, it became, for me anyway, where I had to stop what I was doing just to get them to put their hands up. I mean, it wasn't an automatic thing. And maybe I wasn't consistent enough with it, or maybe I didn't stick with it enough, but it really almost got to be a chore just to get any of that feedback at all. And so I've kind of gone away from it.
Well, and maybe, adding some variety. So maybe not always doing the hands, but I don't know if there's, I was going to show you, I've got a little document over here with some different resources that I'd be happy to show you, but there's different ways that, I would use whiteboards sometimes, just have them write an answer down, which in your classroom that wouldn't necessarily be, but have you ever heard of Padlet? Padlet.com. It's like an online whiteboard. So you give the kids a link and they can just type right on there, and everybody types on the same screen, and you could just have them answer a question on there. And again, I mean, there will be likely some of that some of them don't do a very good job. The electronic feedback, like you were talking about. But it's just implementing those procedures and letting them know this is the expectation, and then you use it as you can, but just some different ways to get a little bit more, some different ideas. And then let's see, the last one was the varied strategies to provide support for different learning styles and levels. I think with, is it Anna? Is she the one that was, so, I mean, if she already gets it, then I think it might be beneficial to go ahead and offer some time to think about what can I do as we're doing this instruction where I can benefit those students that are, the high level learners. And something that I thought about when they were all raising their hands and going through is, and I know you mentioned this last year about making tutorial videos. Have you done that in any of your classes?
Well, I haven't, because with our new computer image, they didn't give us the tools back.
Oh.
That's being rectified.
Okay.
So
yeah, put in a work order.
yeah, it's done.
Okay.
So no, I haven't, simply because of because I just haven't had the tools.
Right. Okay. That was something that I thought, I used to teach a class where they had to do a lot of computer-based things, and what I did is I just made a video for a lot of the basic skills, and so when they had a question, the first thing that I did was go check the video.
Yeah.
And it kind of, and so, your high-level students, maybe they can be the ones that make those videos.
Yeah, that's a good idea, and that just hit me when you were bringing it up.
Oh.
One of the things that we're a couple of us are working on is a decision-making framework, a protocol.
Yes.
And when we get our protocol in place, what our goal is the last step on the protocol is ask the teacher for help. It's again identified in the curriculum council that problem-solving skills are an issue with with employers and employees, and so that felt like a way that we could possibly start teaching those problem-solving skills. We don't have that in place. It's weird we don't have tons of time right now, but that's a goal, would be to put together a 4 or 5 step problem-solving protocol, and the last one, ask the teacher for help.
Right.
And then I would envision it, once a student asks me for help, I ask them, okay, what did you do? Step 1, did you do step 2?
Right.
So, and that's kind of where we're hopefully going.
Yeah, and I think that will, you'll see a difference.
And I think having the kids make the tutorial videos might be kind of interesting. Might be kind of fun for them. Right. Except for the ones that will say that I don't want to talk. But
you can do them just clicking. I mean, mine didn't have a voice recorder. I just used Smart Recorder, which just recorded my screen. I didn't talk into it, but they can still follow the mouse, and see what to do. So there's differentiation there too. But I mean, I think that's, you're already thinking about that differentiation.
Yeah, differentiation is a real hole in what I do. I know that for sure.
But with this content, it is a challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just a couple of things, and I'm going to share this Google Doc with you here. But the NIET rubric, really the ones that we kind of identified here was lesson structure and pacing. And let's see. And then presenting instructional content is going to be another one. And then over here, your environment was just fantastic. But this, so with and I know you've thought about motivating students too, and I feel like really with the motivating students, one of the biggest indicators is, organize it so it's personally meaningful and relevant to students. I think you're headed in that direction. And another way to take it a step further, you have the discussion about it, but then kind of modeling some of those assignments, instead of having it be the mortgage company, make it the car company or something that they connect with.
And that's the goal. That's the process that we're on.
Right.
We're not there yet, obviously, but you're absolutely.
But you're
right
in the
yeah.
And the presenting the instructional content. This is this one identifies ways that you give them the information to keep them more engaged and to get them. So a lot of it is, the visuals, the illustrations, you have your modeling, the concise communication, but this one I think is a good indicator. And then the structure and pacing again, just to kind of break it up a little bit. Their, ability to stay focused is worse now than it's ever been in the history of the world. So it's, that one. And then, all of these are fantastic, but I would say based on our conversations, there's your, environment down there. And I think respectful culture is one that you have as well.
Yeah, it's a good day.
I know there was the one the girl that didn't know what was going on
Right.
over in the corner, and then the one that sits in front of her. They got a little heated off and on. I don't know if did you catch that?
Yes.
They get a little.
The
They go back and forth.
the one
a
that
little
sits
bit.
behind in the third row is she's the only
Instigator.
referral I've written this year.
Oh.
She's the only 2 referrals I've written this year.
Okay.
Yes, we do. We have our days. It would happen to be a good day.
Okay, so these are just some ideas, and of course you don't have to use any of these. I just wanted to give you some things to consider, because I know that in our conversations that you're like, I like it, I'm trying to go this direction, and I just want to give you what support I can. So these are just really basic. But in terms of student engagement, down at the middle school level, PBIS has been implemented. It's a positive behavior enforcement intervention system, but basically you reward the good things. So if you're participating, you get something. I don't know exactly how it works at a high school level. I've seen it work different ways. I had tickets. If you got a ticket, and then at the end of the week I drew out 3 tickets and gave those 3 kids candy, and it was pretty basic, and they loved it.
Right.
But they loved getting those tickets.
High
It was
school
that.
kids love candy. too.
Yeah, and it was that reinforcement piece. So this is just something that you could look at if you wanted to, just for different things. And at high school level, there's various ways you can do that. This Padlet, the online whiteboard, I've used Padlet frequently, and it's just a great way to get everybody's ideas on there, get kids engaged. You can do a security setting where you can monitor what actually goes on the wall, or you can let them
Sure.
have a free-for-all.
Yeah, I
That
don't
would
mean
be-
to. I got like.
Oh yeah,
one
I'm sorry. Okay. These are different formative assessment pieces. And then this was the lesson structure and pacing about timing and block scheduling. And then this gradual release of responsibility model. I do, we do, you do kind of thing. To set it up a little bit more. I thought there was a small disconnect between the demo instruction and then them actually getting the worksheet and being able to pull the info off of the Excel sheet. Because when you did the demo, it was more you just kind of gave them the numbers
Yeah.
and they punched it in.
Yeah.
And then, and it sounded like when I asked you what the common
Right.
questions, it was which data to use.
Yeah.
So maybe, doing a I do, we do, you do with a partner and do one piece, and then you do independent kind of thing, where they practice finding that data and having
Sure.
those discussions. So, okay, so I'm going to leave some of this stuff with you,
Okay.
and I'll share this drive with you.
Awesome.
And we can talk about next steps another time.
Okay.
My lesson structure and pacing did not work for this
Yeah,
conference.
Mine either.